Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Travelers, Season 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The drama sets in the future when humanity was wiped out by a disaster, which strangely caused thousands of people to miraculously come back to life in the modern world. The scene shifts to Marcy, a girl with a mental disability who stumbles over reading a few simple sentences in a library late at night. After her colleague leaves, a group of thugs suddenly appears, intending to have a baby with her. Marcy shouts for help in a chicken voice, saving her colleague but attracting the thugs' attention. Surrounded, she's punched by the leader, a blow strong enough to potentially kill her. As she seems to lose consciousness, her heart stops, but instead of dying, Marcy is instantly revived, full of life and with combat skills to match. She quickly defeats the thugs, ending their fluffy lives. Meanwhile, a man named Trevor is fighting in an underground match. After a powerful kick, he falls to the ground, seemingly dead. Yet in the next moment, he revives fully and decides to forfeit the match and go home. At the same time, Philip, partying with friends on illegal substances, briefly touches death's door, only to revive while his friend isn't so lucky, dying on the spot. Carly, a single mom, is looking after her child when her boyfriend shows up, claiming he needs to use the bathroom. Tricking her into opening the door, he reveals his violent tendencies and punches her, seemingly killing her. However, like before, Carly suddenly revives with new strength and swiftly drives him away. The next day, Marcy's caregiver arrives to help her with reading exercises. To everyone's shock, Marcy reads fluently and speaks with perfect clarity and logic. Her caregiver, who has been with her for over a year, is astounded by the sudden change, suspecting Marcy may have been faking her condition all along to collect government benefits. They review old footage showing Marcy struggling like a preschooler with basic words. As the doctors and caregivers ponder this, Marcy suddenly faints. When she wakes up in a hospital bed, they suspect a head injury caused her drastic behavior change. Marcy insists she has a mission and must leave immediately. Ignoring the doctor's objections, she rushes to the caregiver's home, pleading for trust without revealing much. Meanwhile, Philip faces troubles of his own. The police question him about his friend's death. As a witness who failed to call for help, he becomes a suspect. With no way to explain, he hires a lawyer and makes bail by winning big at the horse races. Today, FBI agent Grant arrives at work as usual. His partner has discovered a mysterious dark web chat room filled with unknown codes that he suspects are linked to cybercrime. After some investigation, Grant traces an IP address to Trevor's home. However, Trevor has already left, leaving Grant empty-handed. Grant calls the police, asking them to monitor another IP address linked to Philip's residence. He then goes to question Carly, but she keeps her lips sealed, giving him nothing to go on. Meanwhile, Carly's boyfriend mistakenly thinks she's cheating on him. Grant then heads to Marcy's caregiver's house. With no answer from inside, he slips his business card under the door. Just as Philip steps out, he finds an old detective waiting for him. His lawyer arrives to assist, but the greedy lawyer wants Philip to predict the next horse race results. Philip refuses, and the lawyer leads him to the detective. Caught off guard, Philip bolts. He reaches a dead-end alley, and just then, the detective has a heart attack. Calmly, Philip reveals his group had once considered the detective as a host, but his health disqualified him. Now Philip can only watch as the detective dies in agony. That evening, Grant calls the caregiver, asking if she's meeting someone at an abandoned building. The caregiver is bewildered, but Carly prepares to leave. Her boyfriend, thinking she's meeting Grant, tries to confront her and ends up getting beaten up by Carly. Undeterred, he follows her to the abandoned building only to lose her. Grant arrives for his investigation. In the chaos, he drops his flashlight and nearly falls, but Trevor saves him. The group finally gathers and explains their purpose. They are all from the future, here to prevent humanity's extinction. It turns out the future masterminds can send consciousness from the future into a host based on the exact time and place of the host's death. These time travelers communicate using secret codes only they understand. Grant learns he is destined to become one of them. According to history, he is supposed to fall to his death while chasing a suspect. The travelers won't change his death, only its circumstances. In the next moment, Grant feels a splitting headache and his consciousness is replaced. Another time traveler has entered. Afterward, Marcy equips Grant with a communication device so the travelers' team can stay in contact. As they plan to leave, the FBI arrives, the backup Grant called earlier. Luckily, the lead female agent is also a traveler and helps them escape. That night, Grant leads the team on a mission. Cut to a military lab where a major ignores a doctor's protests and secretly transports a batch of antimatter weapons. The team's mission is to intercept this cargo. Based on future intelligence, the truck will be alone on a specific road. The team waits in ambush. During the wait, Grant and Carly engage in a flirtatious chat, hinting that they might be a couple in the future timeline. The truck appears and the team springs into action. Carly acts as a decoy, distracting the driver while Marcy injects him with a sedative. The others swiftly steal the weapon and make a clean getaway. The driver wakes up with no memory of what happened and continues driving, only for the truck to explode soon after. Thankfully, the dangerous cargo is no longer on board, saving countless residents. The mission is nearly complete. They just need to deliver the weapon to a new traveler tomorrow. The team members return to their homes. When Marcy arrives, her caregiver is waiting, mentioning the FBI call. Marcy vaguely hints at a secret mission, and the doubtful caregiver dares not press further. The next day, Grant wakes up on his couch, greeted by his wife with a glass of milk. He tries to make small talk based on his host's life to blend in with the family. Meanwhile, Marcy and Philip wait outside an office where a man is about to take his own life. Clearly, he is the next chosen host. Everything seems to be going smoothly until the man suddenly dies, having taken poison as a precaution. History only recorded his death as a gunshot. Later, Grant arrives at their base. Marcy reports the incident, and the time traveler leader must select a new host. As the team historian, Philip reviews all the deaths that day, but finds no suitable candidates. He suggests that another team should bring in the new recruit. Grant, going against the rules, privately seeks help from the female agent, but she claims she cannot assist. The antimatter weapon will explode if not handled quickly, so Philip and Trevor must modify it to delay the explosion. During the process, Philip, suffering from withdrawal symptoms, makes a mistake and gets electrocuted, causing the modification to fail. With only a few hours left before detonation and no plan, Philip suddenly suggests returning the weapon to the lab's research doctor. He then hacks into the lab's control system, triggers a water leak, and the team disguises themselves as repair workers to enter the lab. Meanwhile, the doctor receives a call from the major, who suspects the weapon is still in the lab after last night's small-scale explosion. The major threatens to confront her. The team arrives at the lab just in time, but the doctor sees through their disguise. Grant uses his FBI credentials to gain her trust. Conveniently, the major arrives, and the group resumes their repair act. The doctor, playing along, sends the major away, allowing the team to put the weapon back in the nick of time. Mission accomplished, Grant returns home and is about to enjoy a drink with his wife when a temporary messenger arrives with a warning from their supervisor to stop bending the rules. The next day, Marcy goes for a walk to the hospital with her caregiver to get some exercise. The caregiver suspects Marcy has been pretending all along and is actually an undercover FBI agent. Marcy neither confirms nor denies, eager to complete her mandatory checkup. However, the caregiver says she can skip it since she had one during her last hospital stay. Overjoyed, Marcy leaves to handle more important matters. Meanwhile, Philip arrives at his friend's funeral with flowers. He feels guilty as his failure to call for help contributed to his friend's death, and the friend's parents are deeply resentful. Philip is filled with regret. At school, Trevor, a former campus bully, is summoned to see the school counselor because his delinquent girlfriend is harassing other students. Uncharacteristically, he admits his faults and leaves in a hurry after the session. He has a new mission with the Travelers team today. To stay focused, Philip takes more medication, and Marcy asks him to hack into the hospital's computer system to download her medical report to prevent any issues with her host's health. Grant is set to meet a new traveler that day, but a messenger arrives with news that the mission is canceled due to another failed crossing. Here's a bit of backstory. The brains of young people are more adaptable, so they can be temporarily controlled by future humans to send messages without causing damage. Back at the base, Philip, the team's historian, writes down all the critical information to prevent memory loss from the host's chaotic minds. Exhausted, he completes the task just as Marcy arrives with supplies and gives him a full checkup. Frustrated by his host's bad habits, Philip gets encouragement from Marcy to stay focused on their mission. Out of guilt over his friend's death, Philip leaks horse race results to the lawyer, telling him to give the winnings to his late friend's parents. Elsewhere, Carly's boyfriend receives a USB from a coworker with surveillance footage of Marcy on the night she was possessed by the time traveler. Shocked by the footage of Marcy in full combat mode, he confronts Marcy's caregiver for answers, but she dodges his questions, leaving him no choice but to return home empty-handed. Unsure, he decides to ask Carly directly, but she can't reveal the truth. Fed up with his persistence, she beats him up again, warning him to stay away from her sexy body. The man refuses to give up and goes to Marcy for more answers, only to discover she lives with the caregiver, an illegal arrangement between the mentally disabled and the caregiver. One day, Philip calls Grant about a new mission. Grant, about to go on a field assignment with his partner, quickly makes an excuse and leaves. The travelers' team meets at Carly's house, where the mission is to rescue a kidnapped Romanian boy this time. They only know the kidnappers are a man and a woman and have the boy locked in a basement. Without further ado, the team arms themselves and heads to the location. Grant and Carly go ahead to scout and run into the kidnappers returning home. Grant flashes his FBI badge, pretending to investigate a missing boy case. The kidnappers claim there's no hostage, just their son, so Grant insists on seeing their child. They have to agree to his request. Philip and Marcy sneak into the basement but find no boy, only a flock of chickens shouting in chicken voices. Philip notices some loose dirt and digs up several small skeletons, revealing the kidnappers as cold-blooded killers. Upstairs, a boy is brought out from a room. Grant speaks to him in Romanian and confirms he was kidnapped. Suddenly, the boy is possessed by the time traveler and orders Grant to abort the mission. Realizing that, Grant complies and prepares to leave, but Philip rushes out, demanding to take the boy with them. Tensions rise, and after a brief shootout, both kidnappers are shot, but Philip is also injured. Grant quickly orders the team to take Philip back to base and clean up the diabetic blood. He instructs the boy to tell the police he was alone. The boy agrees, and Grant calls his partner. The police and FBI arrive soon after, and Grant lies, saying he acted on an anonymous tip and accidentally saved the boy. Meanwhile, Marcy starts treating Philip, only to discover that he has filled the glass door with the names of the deceased. When Grant returns, he realizes Philip has been trying to save innocent lives all along. While his intentions were good, breaking protocol angers Grant. Marcy also reveals Philip struggles with his host's vices, leaving Grant feeling even more frustrated. That night, Trevor visits Philip with dinner. As they eat, Trevor notices the names on the glass door and realizes he recognizes one of them. The scene shifts. Grant and his partner are watching two gangs exchange high-tech components. Unexpectedly, a conflict erupts between the gangs. Grant immediately calls for backup and charges in, but it's too late. The gangsters drive away. However, these gangsters are not ordinary criminals. A wounded man on the ground suddenly gives Grant a mission to rescue other travelers. Grant quickly makes an excuse to leave and contacts his team. When Grant reaches the destination, he is shocked to find that the people in front of him are the same gangsters from the earlier exchange. The leader, Rick, explains the situation. They were supposed to hand over the parts to another traveler team, but the other team suddenly attacked, resulting in the death of their doctor and severely injuring another member. Soon, Marcy and Carly arrive to provide medical assistance. While the traveler's mission temporarily stabilizes, troubles from their hosts' lives continue. Grant receives a call from his partner, who has discovered Rick's identity and located another traveler team's base. With no excuse to avoid it, Grant has to go with his partner, but secretly alerts Marcy. Marcy immediately tells Rick to evacuate with the wounded. Grant and his partner soon arrive at the warehouse. As they investigate and prepare to enter, an explosion suddenly occurs inside. Grant is caught off guard by this turn of events. It turns out to be Rick's idea, but he didn't warn Grant. Rick is also annoyed with Carly for bringing a child on a mission. When Grant reaches the new base, he confronts Rick for not warning him about the explosion. Rick is dismissive, and they argue. To make matters worse, Rick acts superior, believing that being an earlier traveler makes him better than the others, which frustrates Grant even more. Meanwhile, Marcy discovers that one of the injured has the same condition as her brother. She tries to ask Rick about the host's identity before crossing, but Rick rudely dismisses her, even lecturing the team members as if he's their superior. Everyone starts thinking Rick is a jerk. Philip comes up with a plan. He contacts the lawyer and uses the winnings from horse races to buy a new property. This gives Grant a reason to demand that Rick move to the new base. Rick refuses and even tries to use his seniority to take over the team's leadership. As they argue, Grant's partner calls, saying the FBI has tracked down some gang members. Marcy, transporting the wounded back to the base, may have been compromised. Hearing this, Rick demands that Grant kill his partner and insists on continuing the mission to deliver the parts to another traveler team. Grant is caught in a dilemma. That night, Grant finally makes a decision. He calls his partner for an important operation. While his partner cautiously scouts ahead, Grant quietly raises his gun from behind, but he hesitates, and before he can pull the trigger, a car pulls up. Both men rush toward it, and it's Rick in the car. Grant, having thought it over, decides to spare his partner and make Rick pay for his arrogance. Rick is captured by the coming FBI and police, leaving him fuming with anger. Grant then assigns Carly and Trevor to deliver the real parts to the other travelers. Making this decision brings immense pressure, and after the mission, Grant thanks the entire team, vowing to take full responsibility for their supervisor's reprimand. To relieve the tension, he and Carly share a smelly hormone yoga session, getting close with his pre-travel girlfriend, leaving it unclear whether this counts as cheating. The scene shifts to a desperate father driving his family toward what he calls meeting Jesus in heaven. The next moment, a traveler takes over his body, and the car comes to a stop. Grant's team, waiting nearby, approaches, but the daughter's crossing unexpectedly fails. Flashing and flexing his FBI badge, Grant convinces her to leave, completing the mission with difficulty. On the way back, the traveler's team discusses the earlier mission when a truck suddenly crashes into them. Trevor wakes up to find himself tied to a wheelchair, as are the others. They're all in a state of confusion. A guard enters and Trevor tries to communicate, but the guard says nothing and drags Philip away. Later, Carly is brought before a TV screen displaying a horror movie from Daniel CC Movie Channel first, and later a question asking which era she is from. It seems their captors know they are travelers. Carly remains silent as the screen continues with more questions, which she dodges until a video of her child appears, causing her to break down like a giant baby and plead for some hormone mercy. Meanwhile, the caregiver wakes up at home to find Marcy didn't return the previous night. Worried, he contacts Grant for information. Realizing something is wrong, Grant quickly tries to contact his team, but there is no response. He instructs his assistant to track their locations and heads out to search for them. However, the caregiver waits downstairs and tries to confront him. Uninterested in arguing, Grant drives off. He first heads to their base, but finds it empty. Using FBI connections, he tracks down a lead to a repair shop only to find their car wrecked. Meanwhile, Philip's interrogation ends abruptly. He's showing withdrawal symptoms and seems delirious, so he's sent back without being questioned. Shortly after, Carly is also returned and tells the others about her ordeal. Philip speculates that the supervisor might have discovered they betrayed Rick. Then the guard arrives to take Trevor away. Trevor starts rambling smelly nonsense, giving no useful information, and is quickly sent back. Finally, Marcy is taken in. The TV shows a series of questions and a video of her caregiver hitting her weak spot. Sensing her vulnerability, the screen switches to show Philip. After hesitating, Marcy keeps silent, but then the screen displays a video of Philip being killed, causing her to have a seizure. The kidnappers still get nothing out of her. Carly comes up with an escape plan. Marcy is brought back and she's relieved to see Philip alive. Trevor realizes the images they saw on the screen were all fake. Carly calls over the guard, asking him to help wipe some blood off her face. When the guard reaches in, she seizes the moment, bites his arm, and knocks him out cold. By this point, Grant has tried every possible way to find his team. Desperate, he breaks protocol again and contacts the female agent for help. She's unsurprised and thinks the traveler's team might have been targeted for a purge. However, it's strange that their supervisor continues to assign missions, suggesting it wasn't an internal betrayal. Grant decides to notify the Allied traveler team that due to a lack of personnel, their mission must be canceled. Still frustrated, Grant discovers the 4 members' location on the dark web and rushes to the unguarded dungeon with the female agent to rescue them. Carly realizes they've been imprisoned for 3 days, but still has no idea of their captor's motives. The next day, the team barely has time to investigate the kidnapping before they must embark on a critical mission. Historical records indicate that an asteroid is on a collision course with Earth, potentially triggering the apocalyptic events that could lead to the end of the world. The team's objective is to change this course of history. Marcy administers a special serum to everyone, granting them immunity to toxic gases before they head to the doctor's lab. Grant sends a message ahead to the doctor, informing her that the team will be arriving on official business. Just after the doctor responds, 2 men show up and she assumes they're with Grant. But they're actually soldiers sent by the Major, who has long suspected that the doctor stole the antimatter weapon meant for the truck. Determined to take matters into his own hands, the Major captures her, accusing her of conspiring with foreign powers to sell the weapon. The Doctor is left fuming at his wild accusations. Meanwhile, Grant's team, disguised as repairmen, distracts the guards and takes them down one by one. Other travelers help secure the lab perimeter. However, upon entering, Grant discovers the Doctor is missing and unreachable by phone. Trevor and Philip, who had just blown up the exhaust vent, are spotted by a soldier who tries to call for backup. Luckily, the vent releases toxic gas, killing the soldier instantly. The team's plan is to use the gas to evacuate the city, making their mission easier. In such chaos, only the travelers will be left on site. At this moment, a middle-aged woman arrives. She's a scientist from the future sent to assist Grant's team. Inside the lab, Grant and his team try every method they can think of, but they can't unlock the biometric lock that requires the Doctor's presence. With the Doctor missing, Philip suggests she might have been taken by the military as they encountered soldiers earlier. Carly and the scientist arrive, and the scientist, who holds a high rank among the travelers, informs them that their actions have caused a major stir in the future world. However, she confirms that their supervisor did not order their kidnapping. For now, they need to focus on unlocking the antimatter weapon. The scientist explains that their mission is to convert the antimatter weapon into a laser weapon to deflect the asteroid, a move that will alter human history. However, she warns that if the mission succeeds, there's a high probability they will disappear upon crossing timelines. This revelation stuns the team. A helicopter arrives with the laser device, and Carly continues to keep non-travelers at bay outside. Everything is ready except for the crucial antimatter weapon. With no way to unlock it, Grant considers rebooting the computer. The scientist, furious, gives him a crash course on physics, warning him that he nearly caused an explosion that would have killed everyone. Fortunately, Philip manages to hack into the Doctor's phone and locates her. Grant quickly decides to go with Marcy to rescue the Doctor. Arriving at the military base, Grant uses his FBI credentials to pressure the Major into taking him to the Doctor, only to find she's no longer there. It was a ruse. Marcy had already secretly extracted the Doctor. The three of them rush back to the lab. After a long while, the Major at the base finally realizes that Grant was the repairman he saw earlier at the lab. He immediately orders his men to gather and head to the lab. Meanwhile, a group of soldiers on the travelers' side are also on high alert. Previously, a charlatan had convinced a group of elderly followers to drink some mysterious holy water. What started as a tragic superstition has now turned them into hosts destined to save the world, a death with purpose after all. Once the travelers successfully possess the hosts, they set out on their mission. Their objective is to confront the military's armed travelers. As defenses are set up, the Doctor and her team make it back to the lab. Initially unaware of the travelers' intentions, the Doctor refuses to unlock the system. Grant's team explains that an asteroid is on a collision course with Earth, which will trigger natural disasters and severe resource shortages, eventually leading to a world war. The travelers aim to use the laser device to convert the antimatter explosion into a laser beam to deflect the asteroid, but this means everyone present will likely die in the explosion. Realizing the laser device isn't modern technology, the Doctor finally agrees to unlock the system. At that moment, the Major arrives with his troops. Carly leads the elderly hosts in a defensive stand, but due to protocol, the travelers cannot kill anyone. They can only suppress the enemy with firepower. The Major quickly notices this and orders his troops to launch a full assault. As the machine is about to activate, the scientist instructs Grant to take the Doctor to safety, while she personally handles the final steps. The Major and his men breach the lab. Calmly, the scientist lights a cigarette and prepares to turn the key, but the Major shoots her, thinking he has won. However, his own men are immediately possessed by future travelers, revealing multiple contingency plans. Forced to kill his possessed soldiers one by one, the Major eventually meets the same fate and is possessed himself. He ends up turning the key. Soon, a massive explosion shakes the Earth. The mission is a success. Surprisingly, Grant's team does not vanish. They are still alive in the 21st century. Back at the base, Grant is unsure if the plan succeeded and feels conflicted. As the team leader, he hides his doubts and joins everyone in celebrating. With their primary mission as travelers complete, their duties are over. Now, they must quietly live out their lives as their hosts. The next day, Grant's partner approaches him for help with something important. They arrive at the location only to be ambushed by a mysterious attacker. Grant realizes his partner might have betrayed him to their enemies. He fights back and is about to escape when a nearby door suddenly opens, revealing his colleagues and wife, leaving him utterly confused. It turns out to be a surprise party celebrating Grant's 15 years on the job. His partner even gives him a commemorative jacket. Still dazed, Grant notices the name of the asteroid on the jacket, but then realizes he read it wrong. Clearly, he is struggling to adjust to a normal life. During the party, Grant's wife thanks his partner for looking after him all these years. The partner casually mentions the time Grant took her to see a doctor. The excuse Grant had previously used for a mission now makes his wife suspicious, sensing her husband is hiding something from her. Already tense, Grant becomes even more uneasy and has no desire to celebrate. As the party ends, Grant reluctantly makes a speech and then asks his wife to take him home. Once they return home, his wife's expression turns sour. She demands an explanation, sensing something is wrong. Realizing he's been caught, Grant tries to soothe her with some hormone yoga session. In a daze, he even mistakes her for his future partner, unleashing unexpected vigor. However, this only convinces his wife further that he has been unfaithful. Grant isn't the only one struggling to adapt. Carly, happily spending time with her child at home, suddenly sees the TV screen displaying the same questions she saw when she was kidnapped. Frightened, she quickly locks the doors and grabs a weapon for protection. Then there's a knock at the door. Terrified, she opens it to find someone from Child Protective Services investigating her child's living conditions. Carly immediately chases them away. Elsewhere, Marcy, who has a brain condition, decides to perform surgery on herself. When the caregiver returns, he is shocked to find her covered in blood. Marcy explains that she is implanting a device to prevent her seizures. Realizing Marcy has gone from being intellectually disabled to a self-surgeon, the caregiver demands to know the truth. However, Marcy silences him with a smelly kiss, and he's instantly won over, no longer asking questions. However, when Marcy suddenly starts bleeding from her nose, she feels something is wrong and instructs the caregiver to extract some spinal fluid for testing. Reluctantly, he complies. Afterward, the caregiver helps Marcy lie down, and she moves closer to him, continuing what they had started earlier. Meanwhile, Philip, bored and aimless, turns back to using illegal substances and begins to lose himself in a haze right on the street. By chance, his lawyer spots him and quickly pulls him away, taking him to a support group meeting. The recent string of events has left Philip feeling overwhelmed, and he considers revealing everything, but his rational mind reminds him that breaking the protocol is not an option. He must continue playing the role of his host. Trevor, on the other hand, tries to blend into everyday life. He's out shopping with his girlfriend, who asks him to help her steal some clothes. Confused, Trevor hesitates, so she decides to do it herself and is caught by a store clerk. She flees fast in panic like a Tesla bike, leaving Trevor to clean up the mess and pay for the stolen clothes. Distracted and restless, Trevor decides to invite his girlfriend to meditate with him. However, he finds it hard to relax, as he's been carrying the weight of saving the world. With the mission complete, he feels lost without a purpose. His girlfriend encourages him to find a new goal, but before he can, trouble comes knocking. That night, Trevor goes to the base to hang out with Philip. While they are chatting, the computer suddenly alerts them to a new mission. The next day, the team members find themselves watching an indescribably provocative live pay-per-view stream. According to the records, these streamers are destined to die at the hands of a deranged fan. At that moment, a man with explosives plans to blow up the streaming company. It's clear that both the man and several of the streamers are chosen hosts. Grant's team is once again tasked with receiving new travelers, but the mission takes an unexpected turn when the stream suddenly cuts off, indicating the explosion has already happened. The original plan has clearly gone awry. Grant rushes to the scene. His partner tells him there are no survivors in the building, but the perpetrator seems to have survived. Grant immediately informs Philip to deactivate the bomb and asks him to send the host's location. Meanwhile, his partner learns from an insider that the suspect is a man named Donner, a radical terrorist and a fanatic fan of one of the female streamers who had previously made threats. With solid evidence, they prepare to make an arrest. Grant sets off to find Donner. On the way, an elderly woman asks for help, saying a bleeding man has entered her kitchen. Grant investigates and finds Donner hiding there. Grant quickly reveals he's a traveler, but Donner chooses to knock him out and flee. When Grant regains consciousness, he realizes his communication device is broken and Donner has fled back to his home, packing his belongings to escape. However, Grant's partner, ever efficient, captures Donner quickly. The other team members remain unaware of the situation. Trevor is happily studying with his sexy teacher, Carly is busy at a custody hearing for her child, and Philip, disguised as a lawyer, is defending her. During the hearing, her boyfriend deliberately provokes Carly, causing her to lose her temper. Realizing her mistake too late, Carly loses custody. The Child Protective Services representative suggests Carly find a job and earn a legitimate income so she can appeal again. Elsewhere, the caregiver's boss receives a report from Carly's boyfriend and discovers the caregiver is living with Marcy, his former patient. The boss immediately fires him. The caregiver pleads, suggesting the boss meet Marcy before making a final decision. Defeated, he returns home and explains the situation to Marcy, saying he plans to invite his boss over for dinner. That evening, the boss arrives and is shocked to see that Marcy seems completely normal. Marcy claims she and the caregiver are just friends. Just then, Grant arrives and asks Marcy to fix his broken communication device. The caregiver claims Marcy is actually an FBI agent. The boss confronts Grant asking for his credentials, but Grant ignores him and leaves, creating an awkward tension. The next day, the caregiver pleads with his boss again, but the boss demands he resign, believing Marcy has been faking her disability to receive government benefits. The caregiver is furious, but can do nothing. Later, Marcy privately meets the boss, returns the welfare funds, and pretends to be an agent, pressuring him to reinstate the caregiver. Meanwhile, back in his office, Grant speaks with the suspect, Donner, demanding he admit to being a traveler. Surprisingly, Donner appears unaware of the travelers and denies any knowledge. When his lawyer arrives, Donner, in a bid to avoid conviction, claims Grant told him about a mysterious organization of travelers that has infiltrated every aspect of society. The lawyer tells Grant that Donner has requested to speak to the prosecutor, confident he can turn the tables. Soon, Donner's hearing begins. This time, he drops the act and openly admits to being a traveler, revealing the traveler's missions, contact information, and other details. With no choice, Grant admits he's a traveler as well. Donner feels he has the upper hand, but what he doesn't realize is that everyone in the room is also a traveler. The hearing quickly turns into an interrogation. Cornered, Donner confesses the truth. He failed to defuse the bomb as planned, causing the deaths of his teammates. Terrified, he decided to betray his team. His treachery earns him a death sentence, with another traveler set to take his place. As the new traveler arrives and overwrites Donner's consciousness, the original Donner is condemned to life imprisonment. When Grant visits Donner for a final goodbye, he learns that despite the team's efforts to divert the asteroid, humanity has not escaped extinction. In fact, the future seems to have become even bleaker. The scene shifts to Grant receiving a mysterious box that no one on the team can open, except that it's confirmed to be from the future. Grant is soon assigned a mission. He must take the box on a flight to protect a senator. He calls his wife to tell her he has a mission and won't be home tonight. On the plane, the senator sits next to him as planned. To his surprise, Grant sees his wife on the same flight. It turns out she was suspicious that he might be sneaking off to meet a lover, so she decided to follow him secretly. Just then, the plane begins to shake violently, and a flight attendant orders Grant back to his seat, leaving him frustrated. Meanwhile, Carly is preparing for a job interview to regain custody of her child. She tries to call Grant for help, but there's no signal on the plane. She heads to the base, where she learns that Grant is on the flight. Carly quickly checks his flight information, and Philip's face turns pale when he hears the flight number. He immediately alerts Marcy and Trevor to assemble. The plane descends to an altitude where signals can be received. Philip quickly tells Grant that according to historical records, the flight is destined to crash with no survivors. Grant panics and fumbles with the box, finally managing to open it. Inside is a protective shield designed to save the senator, but it only has enough energy to save 2 people. Now Grant faces a dilemma. Should he save his wife or the senator? Caught between his duty and his family, Grant is torn. Just then, the team informs him that the plane's entire body will be destroyed, except for the tail section, which will remain intact. There might be a slim chance of survival if he stays at the tail. Grant decides to tell his wife and the senator to stay together with the box and follow its instructions. He then runs to the tail of the plane, praying to survive. Moments later, the plane crashes. A sphere of energy rolls out, and the team rushes over, only to find Grant's wife and the senator. They quickly begin to resuscitate them. Once both are revived, the senator is immediately possessed by a traveler. Carly guesses that Grant must be in the tail section and rushes toward the wreckage, but an ambulance has already taken him away. With no other options, the team takes Grant's wife home. For safety, Marcy injects Grant's wife with an amnesia drug. They realize Grant has likely been rescued by another group of travelers. Marcy calls Grant's phone, and the person on the other end confirms that Grant is alive and instructs them to return to the base after dropping off his wife. Trevor carries Grant's wife to the bedroom while Philip pours alcohol to create the illusion of a drunken stupor. By the time they finish, it's late at night. Back at the team's base, a specialized medical traveler is performing surgery using nanobots, but the operation will take time. The next morning, Grant's wife wakes up with a splitting headache and no memory of the previous day. She messages Grant, and Philip replies using Grant's phone, saying she drank too much last night. Since Grant's car is still at the airport, Philip has to go fetch it. At the parking lot, Grant's FBI credentials cause the security guard to mistake Philip for a car thief, and he tries to arrest him. Forced to act, Philip subdues the guard. Meanwhile, Grant's partner, noticing his absence from work, tries to contact him and tracks Grant's vehicle. Spotting Philip driving it, he also assumes he's a car thief and sends a message to Grant's phone. Philip, realizing the situation is dire, decides to ditch the car and calls Carly for help. In a critical moment, Carly arrives in her car, blocks the police, and distracts them long enough for Philip to escape. FBI agents begin to suspect Grant's frequent visits to a certain garage. Philip, hacking into the police system, notices that the FBI is onto the location. The team needs to think fast to deceive the FBI. Fortunately, Grant's surgery is nearly complete. Soon, Grant's partner arrives at the garage. Carly, disguised as a mechanic, is working there. The partner is surprised to see Grant and Philip together. They put on a show, with Grant claiming Philip is his hacker informant who hacked his phone and stole his car to demonstrate the vulnerabilities in the FBI's security system, offering his services to improve it. Their performance successfully deceives the FBI. With the crisis averted, Grant returns to his life, determined to be a good husband. But his peaceful moment is short-lived when he gets a call from the caregiver and has to rush off, leaving his wife again. It turns out that after a night of passion, the caregiver, gazing lovingly at Marcy, sees her nose suddenly start bleeding, and she faints. When Grant arrives at the hospital, Marcy reveals that her host's body has a congenital defect that cannot be cured with 21st century medicine. Grant, unwilling to give up, vows to find a solution. However, before he can devise a plan, he receives a new mission and heads back to the base, preparing to meet the new travelers with Philip. Meanwhile, Trevor sneaks into his sexy teacher's car and drugs her. When she wakes up tied up, she panics and screams for help, thinking Trevor intends to harm her and have a baby with her. Trevor hurriedly explains that according to historical records, she is supposed to die today and become a host for a traveler. Breaking protocol, he tells her about his mission from the future to save the world. While on his mission, Philip realizes the expected event did not occur. He suddenly recalls Trevor mentioning he knows someone on the death list. It must be his sexy teacher. Realizing Trevor has likely violated protocol to save the host, he informs Grant, who tells him to find Trevor. Trevor is about to inject the teacher with an amnesia serum. She pretends to cooperate, but secretly thinks he's crazy. Faking unconsciousness, she knocks Trevor down and escapes to the car, trying to call the police. But she doesn't get far before the car screeches to a halt. The teacher, now possessed by a traveler, angrily scolds Trevor for disrupting the supervisor's plans. It seems that the teacher, despite being sexy, still couldn't avoid her body being taken over and possessed. The traveler inside the teacher has a mission to find another traveler who arrived this morning, who was a ranch owner. In the future, the teacher and the ranch owner were old acquaintances, both programmers. The ranch owner developed a modification program that a rebel faction in the future wants to overthrow the supervisor, so he fled to the 21st century to seek refuge. Realizing these two are high-ranking figures, Grant asks them to help with Marcy's condition. The teacher agrees, saying she indeed has a way to treat Marcy. She immediately starts working with quantum mechanics to attempt a cure. Before the treatment begins, as everyone chats in the restaurant, the teacher reveals that she is the one responsible for selecting host candidates. Due to her oversight, Marcy's possession was an accident. That's why she came to the 21st century to correct her mistakes. However, there is a side effect to the treatment. The moment Marcy is cured, she will lose all memories from after her possession. Hearing this, Marcy grows somber. Sensing something is wrong, Grant approaches her for a talk. Marcy admits she cannot let go of her beloved caregiver and decides to go home and say a proper goodbye. At this crucial moment, all the team members accompany Marcy home, trying to comfort her. Not long after, the countdown to her death begins. Marcy collapses in agony with a splitting headache and soon undergoes another possession. The team is forced to welcome a new Marcy back yet again. When the caregiver arrives home, it's already too late. Marcy has lost all memory of him. The team decides not to interfere further, and before leaving, they explain Marcy's amnesia to the caregiver. In the awkward atmosphere, the two start getting to know each other all over again. Meanwhile, danger is quietly approaching. A sidekick girl whose entire family has been possessed by travelers suddenly gets possessed herself and kills her traveler parents. It's clear she has a different agenda than the others. She rushes to her school and tries to stab the teacher without a word. The two struggle, but Trevor arrives just in time to save the teacher. He quickly informs the team to meet at the base. At the base, the teacher explains the situation. The so-called supervisor is actually a super AI system that replaces Boolean logic with quantum law on an algorithmic level. In the future, a rebel group is trying to seize control of the super AI. To ensure safety, the programmer in the teacher's body performed a security upgrade on the super AI. During the brief time the super AI was offline, chaos erupted in the future world. However, the super AI is expected to come back online soon. The people who locked the team members in a dungeon for interrogation were actually rebels from the future. The programmer traveled to the 21st century to stop the rebel conspiracy. Grant, unsure whether to trust the possessed teacher, instructs Trevor to take her away. Trevor takes the teacher to the ranch owner's house, but the ranch owner is missing. He is actually just out shopping and unharmed. Trevor gets straight to the point and asks if he was involved in resetting the super AI. Startled, the ranch owner leads them to a warehouse, revealing a quantum machine inside. The machine is meant as a last resort. If the rebellion becomes too severe, the super AI will come to the 21st century. The warehouse is shielded, preventing the rebels from finding it. Elsewhere, Carly's boyfriend hands his child to a babysitter. Carly, observing from a distance, spots the sidekick girl approaching with a gun in her rearview mirror and rushes to intervene. In the nick of time, her boyfriend steps in to help Carly escape. Meanwhile, the female agent confronts Grant, aiming a gun at him, claiming it's on the super AI's orders. Grant is confused, but quickly realizes it must be a rebel plot. Fortunately, the agent hesitates and fires a fake shot, letting Grant go. Realizing the rebels might target his family, Grant hurries to his wife, urging her to leave. But she insists on speaking with Grant's partner instead. The danger isn't limited to Grant. Marcy receives a call from the caregiver who is being held at gunpoint. The captors demand he call Marcy to lure her home. Marcy returns with a gun, kills the captor next door with a headshot through the wall, and leaves. Terrified, the caregiver plans to call the police, but Marcy warns him not to reveal the truth before leaving. Sensing the danger, the team regroups at the base to discuss why the super AI would turn travelers against each other, but they come up with no answers. Unbeknownst to them, rebel assassins have already arrived. After a brief firefight, the team quickly retreats to find Trevor. Meanwhile, outside the warehouse's shield, Trevor receives a message to abort the mission. He rushes back, but the teacher believes the message is a rebel trick. The two argue, and in a fit of rage, Trevor picks up an axe, intending to destroy the machine. The ranch owner draws a gun to stop him. At that moment, Grant's team arrives, siding with Trevor. They debate whether the message is genuine. Through their discussion, they realize their actions have altered the future's timeline. In the original timeline before their crossing, the super AI was an all-powerful entity, and the rebels were weak. But now, with the timeline changed, the rebels have gained strength and pose a threat to the super AI. Grant firmly believes the super AI wouldn't make mistakes, but Carly presents the order to kill him. Grant's faith is shattered. Suddenly, an attack begins outside. In his haste, Trevor charges forward and the ranch owner fires his gun. The programmer-possessed teacher sacrifices herself to shield Trevor, but the bullet passes through her, striking Trevor. Grant quickly orders the team to provide medical aid. The ranch owner seizes the moment to activate the machine, preparing to summon the super AI. But in the next instant, he is possessed by a traveler and changes his order, demanding Grant destroy the machine. Just as Grant is about to act, an FBI team arrives, led by Grant's partner. In this story, though Grant and his team managed to alter the asteroid's trajectory, they couldn't change human nature. Humanity may have avoided an ecological disaster through time travel, but they cannot escape a war brought on by human conflicts. The detection of antimatter energy hitting the asteroid rekindled the arms race among global superpowers, leaving the root cause of extinction unchanged. Worse still, the altered timeline has led to the rise of the rebel army, causing division within the travelers themselves. Facing these challenges, the travelers are bound to overcome all obstacles and save the world once more. Yet, that is another story for another time. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.